Hello. If Kamala Harris wins this election, you can bet the battle will still go on, but it'll be exceptionally difficult if you want a large middle class. If Kamala Harris loses this election, you can bet there'll be a small group of people who will head to some three-star restaurant in the foothills, and they'll order a large group of characters to start throwing Molotov cocktail bombs in the street. That's what they've always done. Well, let's continue. One of the things that Kamala and her campaign said went something like this. You have to undo the past 4 years. You see how horrible the past 4 years has been. When it was pointed out that they're the ones that have been in power for the past 4 years, it didn't make one bit of difference. She's addressing your emotion, and it's that bum's rush that you have to stand up to. Another example of facing that pile of tangled wire goes something like this. The Democrats want to tax the rich, make them pay their fair share. The Republicans say, oh, no, don't do that. Don't tax the rich. Well, hold on a second. They're both two peas in a pod. They both want to live in the foothills and do all the consuming while we live in their apartments and rent property from them. And neither of them are going to pay taxes, so you know there's something horribly wrong with a lot of it. Let's us have at this. We'll impose decency as a formal argument. We'll go back to a citizenry of normal, well-adjusted characters and have home economics. And then gone is the professional consumer, and in go people such as Henry Ford. And we don't even think that way. We just try and make Henry Ford as better off as he possibly can. And he's the one putting cars in our big American cars in our driveway. And that's how you get a large middle class. We stand up for the criminal trial attorney who defends the poor and the oppressed. He'll never be living in the foothills, but he'll darn sure live in a doctor and lawyer's house and take Wednesdays off and play in that silly tennis tournament, whether he likes it or not. And that's how you build the ideal society that everybody cherishes. Let's pause and then continue. Kamala Harris is the border czar. She's supposed to be securing our borders, but it couldn't be farther from the truth. In the 1970s, when all of this was taking place, the governor here in Arizona, his name was Raul Castro. And a few decades later, and a few decades before today, when he was in his 90s, he was giving a speech in front of a local Hispanic group. They filmed it and stuck it on the local cable access. And these are the things that they said. First, the person who introduced him talked about how they were changing the demographics. And that's terribly important for today. Then Raul Castro got up and he started talking, and it became evident that, yes, he was a communist. And he started talking about how good Fidel Castro was. And then he said, look at all the presidents that have come and gone. And Fidel Castro was still there. Then he paused, shook his shoulder, and said, see, it works. Let's review a few things. In their mind, they're hustling. And in their mind, it works. And yes, let's go here. We'll go from an induction to a deduction. Yes, they're intentionally flooding the country with people from Mexico and Central America in order to trash our country. And yes, that includes Kamala Harris. So let's us have a sense of category and impose a formal argument of decency. If you came up from Mexico or Central America and you want to be an American Yank and all those things we've talked about, well, you're in this camp and you're called the good guys. And if you're in government and you want to have the same government that they have in Mexico and you want to trash the country, well, you're called the bad guys. And that's pretty much it. It's just a decision. I have to stop and remind myself of something, that you can't go back from the Democrats back to the Republicans, and you can't go from the liberals back to the conservatives. This isn't even a Donald Trump thing. You go behind Donald Trump's back, straighten everything out, and then guys like Donald Trump would be in their glory. And you take it from there. So what's wrong? What's wrong is they had a revolution in this country back in the 1970s, and that's when they won. And two, they institutionalized hustling, and it's that bummed rush that we have to address. What do I do about it? We go back to God and country. We straighten ourselves up emotionally. We will the good of another person, and we do it because Christ rose on the third day. Then we have home economics, and that's how we get a large middle class and everybody out of poverty. How do we do it? Well, there's a problem. They threw out a judicial court, a court that will establish facts that are true as true. And they threw out a judicial press. And they threw out a judicial voting system. They threw out the Australian balloting system. And that's it. We don't argue inside of that. These elections are as unacceptable as the elections are in Russia and China and all the other places. And that you have to do something about. So gather the gang together and we'll ask ourselves, what are you supposed to do about this? I'm sure Kamala Harris will simply resign and go get a garbage sack and start picking up, forming a class of peasantry beneath the class of peasantry that they caused. But I don't really believe what I just said. It'll be up to you. We'll see you tomorrow.